Food emissions. Do food miles matter? Food miles were all the rage in the 1990s. We were told then that the best way to protect the planet was to buy locally produced foods, and since the country of origin was printed on the packaging, we were able to make informed choices. Or so we thought. The truth is, food miles contribute very little to the climate impact of food, and the most damaging factors are still not printed on the packs. How big a problem is air freight? One of the reasons we think food miles are such a problem is because we assume that most fresh produce is flown into our country. Air freighting food creates around 10 times more carbon emissions than if the products are road freighted, and around 50 times more than if they are shipped. But, while we may note that our beans are from Kenya or our apples from South Africa, we would not know how they were transported. In reality, only highly perishable goods such as asparagus, green beans and berries are commonly air freighted. Other, fresh, produce, such as tomatoes, bananas and apples can be harvested before they are ripe, stored for long periods, and then with the use of chemicals, ripened at the right time for their sale. While this may be undesirable for a number of reasons, it does significantly reduce the carbon footprint of those foods. However, whether food is shipped, trucked or flown to the UK, the impact of those food miles is dwarfed by other factors. According to the experts, the suggestion that we eat local to protect the planet is one of the most misguided pieces of advice. Land use change. Half of the world's habitable land is used for agriculture, but meat production requires a lot more land than is needed to cater for plant-based diets. In fact, animal agriculture uses 83% of our farmland, but gives us just 18% of our calories. With both meat consumption and the global population rising, more and more farmland is needed, and it is created by destroying natural habitats, including forests. This releases vast amounts of CO2 per kilogram of food. Beef is the worst offender when it comes to the amount of climate-altering emissions produced through land clearance, but cheese, and meat from chickens, turkeys, geese and ducks, is also right up there. On-farm impacts. While land use change is a particular problem for beef, overall the biggest climate impact tends to come from on-farm practices, including the use of farm machinery and fertilizer, but also from the animals or plants themselves. As we've seen, much more land is needed to make animal products because animals eat far more calories in plants than are yielded in their meat, milk or eggs. Not only are wild habitats destroyed to make cropland, that land is pushed to maximum productivity by using fertilizers. That nitrogen fertilizer is not only disastrous for the climate, it runs into the water table, pollutes waterways and decimates aquatic life. Methane. Another serious on-farm issue is methane, a gas that has a warming potential more than 80 times that of CO2. Levels of methane have risen sharply in recent years caused, in large part, by the production of meat. Ruminants like cows and sheep produce methane through the digestive processes, which makes beef, lamb and dairy some of the biggest emitters. However, when Oxford University researchers examined the environmental impacts of different foods, there was another surprising culprit: the farming of freshwater fish, such as prawns. Such farms provide 96% of the freshwater fish for Europe. The study found that the animals' waste and unconsumed feed collect at the bottom of the ponds where there is little oxygen, which is the perfect environment for the production of methane. Together, land use changes and on-farm practices account for around 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the production of meat and dairy, with the remaining 20% coming from the production of animal feed, processing and slaughter, transportation and packaging. The worst offenders. When all the different impacts are tallied, there is no doubt that the most damaging foods for our climate are animal-based foods. Eating local beef or lamb has many times the carbon footprint of most other foods. Whether they are grown locally or shipped from the other side of the world matters very little for total emissions. And while beef and lamb may be the very worst offenders, cheese, prawns, meat from pigs and chickens, eggs, wild-caught fish and milk are right up at the top of that list, too. In fact, almost every animal product is responsible for more emissions than almost every plant product, with the notable exception of chocolate. However, since we tend to eat small amounts of chocolate and not with every meal, its actual impact is significantly smaller than for meat or dairy. Meat versus vegan. An analysis of typical meat-based meals compared to their vegan equivalents reveals just how stark a difference our diet can make. A beef-based shepherd's pie for a family of 4 is responsible for more than 16 kilograms CO2, which is like driving 54 miles in a standard petrol car. If you make that exact same meal but with lentils instead of beef, the climate impact plummets to 4.4 kilograms CO2, which is like driving less than 15 miles. Comparing a nut roast to roast lamb shows an even bigger saving. Roast lamb for 4 people emits 20 kilograms CO2, compared to just 1.4 kilograms for the vegan meal. This is like driving 67 miles compared with 1.5 miles.